Troubled youths are rarely far from the headlines. Rioting in Britain, crime here at home. There's never any shortage of young people who appear to have fallen through the cracks in the system. Sometimes the answers aren't obvious, and on a patch of land just outside Hastings on the North Island's east coast is an answer that is less than obvious, but which seems to be more than effective. And the therapists don't speak any English. In fact, they don't speak at all. They're horses. Ros Rowe is no ordinary horsewoman. She knows horses, that's for sure. She loves horses, that's a given. But she puts horses to work in a way that's quite unique, helping the kids who've been abandoned by the system.
Well, we figured that a lot of these children, they have psychiatrists, psychologists, they have social workers, they have counsellors, and the last thing they need is yet another counsellor jawboning at them. So we don't jawbone at them, we let the horses be the therapist. And initially they will just spend time with their horse, and some of them for the first time in their lives, they have an inkling of acceptance and even love, to be loved unconditionally. And we make up our minds that when the children come here, we will love them unconditionally. We will be tough on them because kids love boundaries, and some of them don't get boundaries. So we do give them boundaries, and once they get comfortable within those boundaries, they start to blossom.
I wasn't in school. I was in trouble all the time. From what I've seen over the past 2 years since I've been here is that it actually helps a lot of people. Doesn't matter what background you come from, where you come from, they seem to help you quite a lot. Like, I've been here for 2 years. I mucked up a couple of times, but I'm doing all right now, I gotta say.
Well, the Leg Up Trust grew out of a small horse trekking operation that I had started in 1999, I think it was, to help a young woman who had suffered a tragedy in her life. And at the same time, coincidentally, I had had 3 unwanted horses dumped on me, and I've got a chronic illness, and I wasn't sure how I was going to deal with all this. And one night I just sort of thought, if I put this young lady and the horses together, they can support one another in earning their keep. So I don't know what made me do it. Anyway, so I started a little horse trekking business, had no idea how to run a business, and there was nothing in it for me. There was only enough money coming in to support the one girl. And so we started with the 3 horses and eventually built up to about 16. And we enjoyed it, but we felt slightly as if people came out to use the horses as a beast of burden, go on a ride, tick it off their list and go home. But the day came when the young woman got on her feet and she was ready to spread her wings again, and so she got another job. And I thought, oh, it's time for me to close down. That was what it was all for, and I was tired and all the rest of it. But there was a real outcry from people who had been coming to us, and I was quite adamant that we were closing. But one night I woke up and I just heard a voice say, "Give them a leg up." I thought, gee, that's a cool name. Give them a leg up. Okay, so that's really how it started. But our aims were to reach out to marginalised people that had been, a lot of people in our communities, they're cast aside and they're falling through the cracks. We've got a boy here today who got into trouble at school a year or 2 ago, and he was kicked out, and do you know he's never been back to school, and he's 14, and there's nobody to ask why.
One group drawn to the Leg Up Trust was the Nico Centre, a local initiative in Napier designed to help intermediate-age students referred to them for severe truanting and what's termed high-end difficulties. It brings students to the trust to experience Ros's healing horses. Sue Drummond was the centre's manager.
The Leg Up Trust is a really important part of our teaching social skills and empathy to these kids because they don't have the skills. So this is just another way of them learning how to relate to others, whether it be horses or humans, as a means to go forward in life, really. Ros obviously is the key person, and she teaches a lot of basic, or insists on a lot of basic skills that we insist on too. So it's not just about working with the horses, it's about saying thank you or excuse me or understanding the seasons or getting them to think about things in different ways.
Don't tug, just a bit of pressure and ask. Ask, 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 ask. Good. Good. You're too close to him, Tutaroo. Love is not a feeling. You know, often adults think love is a feeling and it's not. It's a decision that you will love. And so to express their love for their horses, they have to be able to care for the horse and to understand how a horse thinks, because horses don't think like us. Horses are prey animals, we're predators. We have to prove to this horse here, don't we, Benny, that we're not a predator, that we are not a predator, we are his friends. He's just nodding agreement here. So this is where we teach the children to read horses' body language, to realise that horses are reading their body language, and that the horses actually know more about those kids by the end of a morning than we'll ever know about them in a lifetime, because horses are so adept at reading body language. And the language bit is to start communicating with the horse in a way that the horse understands, and from that they start to communicate with us, and then we hope they'll take it to their families and to their schools. And for instance, a few weeks ago, the group that was here this morning, when they came, they had quite foul mouths, and I'd say to them, we don't speak like that out here. And they said, well, what should we say? And I said, when things go wrong, say, oh, bother. And they took it back to school with them, oh, bother. And so just little things like that, so that they step outside this dark zone they live in. They're so unaware of the world around them, and I always believe that creation is there simply to develop our sense of wonder, and if we wonder, that leads us elsewhere. That leads us into an awareness of the Creator.
The Leg Up Trust was set up by Ros Rowe near Hastings to cater for young people who simply don't fit into our education system. To watch her working with her horses as healers and with the kids who are brought to her, you realise her gifts are as much about working with the youngsters as with the horses.
Give her a rub and send her out again. She's got an allergy. Now you need to tie this up a little bit more up there, okay? Because when it's down on the soft part of her nose, it's uncomfortable for her. Yeah, Dewey's afraid, especially when it's moving like that. That'll really freak him out. So your job is to make him confident enough to deal with this. And he really does need very careful handling, because he's left-brained introvert a lot of the time, but he'll go right-brained fairly quickly. So very, very gently. Okay, that's my best boy.
But at the very beginning, the Leg Up Trust nearly never happened.
So we were on rented land out on the coast at that stage, and we set up Leg Up and confidently went to the landowner and said, we've started this trust and we're looking after these young people that are at risk and people with mental health issues and all the rest of it. And he said, well, look, really, we want the land back to ourselves. We don't really want you to stay here. And it ripped the rug from under our feet before we'd even really got started. And you know, funding agencies wouldn't fund us because they said, well, prove yourselves and then come back to us. And we said, we can't prove ourselves until you help us. nobody wanted us. We did letterbox drops. We just went all around the countryside trying to get someone who would take us on. Nobody would. And it gradually dawned on me that the only way to save the trust was to put my own home on the market. And at that time I had a little tumble-down cottage in Homoana that I'd bought when no one wanted to live there, and suddenly everyone wanted to live there. And when I realised that I was going to have to choose between my comfort and the children, I knew it had to be the children. And I'm not saying I did it nobly. I put that on that house on the market and left there kicking and screaming. And we set about, I put the place on the market, set about looking for another property, and did a lot of praying about it. And the message I kept getting was water, and I kept getting scriptures about water. And anyway, looked at places, and there were some beautiful places with little lakes and rivers, and I thought, this is it, and the door kept closing. And eventually we were getting desperate because time was running out, and a friend of mine lived at this place and was thinking of selling. It is a very barren place. At the time she had a handful of sheep and 3 horses on it, and it barely supported them. It was full of weeds. It was a very dry, barren place. So I thought, well, this isn't the place. So I kept looking, and every door but this one shut. And in the end I gave in and I said, Lord, I don't know what you're going on about, but this must be it. So I went to see the lawyer and got the title of deed, or whatever you call it, and I looked at it for the first time, and the title of this land was Te Awa o Te Atua, the River of God. And so we came here, and it's been really, really blessed. And people have said that they fly over this land because there's an airfield just across the road, and they said it looks like a jewel in the middle of a desert because it's always emerald green. In the height of summer it's emerald green, and everywhere else is brown and dry.
Rosie's work is supported by a network of volunteers and prayer supporters, even if some of them aren't entirely sure about horses.
Well, I don't really have anything to do with the horse side of it. I know the head and the tail, and that's about my limit. But I do. I'm out here every weekend. I mean, every Sunday we meet. We have our fellowship time, and through the week I give William a music lesson and just fill in with any little bits like lunches and that sort of thing.
No, next week. No, you don't come just to ride. What are we here for? Love, language and leadership. We're not here to use and abuse the horses, are we? We're here to learn about ourselves and find out what pushes our buttons. And you guys had your buttons pushed today, didn't you? So you had your boredom button pushed, didn't you? And you had your patience button pushed, didn't you, Naki? We try and teach them just basic things like the change of the seasons, and even looking at cloud formation. Some of them don't know to look up. And you say to them, can you hear the bird's song? No, can't hear the bird song. So we just want to awaken in them a sense of wonder so that it takes them a step along the way to living a fulfilled life, and teaching them that they don't actually have to stay in this dark zone they're in. They can step outside it. And the horses are really good at doing that. So the leadership is probably the most important one. And we get people who are watching what we do and they say, show that horse who's boss. And I say, no, we don't show the horse who's boss, we show leadership. And if you say to a kid, show that horse who's boss, you see the fists clench. If you say, show leadership, their chests swell. That's what they need to do. I'm going to be a leader. And why would you tell a bully to show the horse who's boss? Why would you do that? So we're just working on principles like this where they're learning to think about how they seem to other living things, including horses, starting with horses and then to us, and helping them to take responsibility, to learn what honesty and integrity mean. Don't try to run before you can walk, okay? Your horses will only do what you ask them to if you give them clear signals, okay? So Jill, I'll just ask you to be
I
roving
think that
and
leg up and
help people
Nico
to-
and the fact that people are interested and care about them, and I think those are two key principles of both programs, that's some stability and some security and some sense of self-worth, because they might walk in the door and Sharon might say, "How are you today, buddy?" or whatever, and then somebody might say, "Oh, how did this such and such go?" and just being interested, and often they don't have anybody that's interested in them.
Bye. Goodbye, darling. See you, Tootaroo. Look after yourself, and probably see you Saturday.
The children who benefit most from the kind of opportunities offered by the Leg Up Trust are often described as falling through the cracks. It seems the cracks are always there, and what's there to catch them when they fall changes depending on official strategies at the time. When this documentary was being filmed, the Nico Centre, regular Leg Up Trust users, had been told that it would no longer be taking students in and would instead respond to situations as they occur within schools. This was their last visit. Sue Drummond.
Some kids don't fit the mould of being in a mainstream school, and I don't think that's I think that Nico provided an alternative for some students and could turn things around for them really successfully, and do it in such a way that is impossible for a school in terms of our staffing levels. The fact that we had a van, so it enabled us to come out and do things like this. We have a social worker who works as part of our program. We have a teacher aide, that's Sharon, and Bernie was our teacher. So it was 4 staff to 6 kids. You can't replicate that in a school, and there's not going to be funding from anybody that's going to allow that to be replicated in every school. So Nico provided a really viable alternative, I believe, for some schools to offer something that would help their kids.
The demand for the kind of therapy Ros's healing horses can supply continues to outstrip the Leg Up Trust's ability to supply. However much the team want to reach out and help, lack of funds is an obstacle.
We don't want to be yet another person or people in a long line of people who have let these kids down. And every time I feel tempted to give up and just get into my garden, which I'd love to do, and ride my horse, which I hardly ever do, I think, no, I can't do that. I can't be yet another one in a long line of people who have disappointed these kids. And there are disappointed kids in our communities everywhere. They're neglected, abused. They've fallen through the cracks.
Yeah, I've been out of school for about a year and a half now.
Why is that?
Fighting.
So they just didn't want you back?
No other school in Hastings to take me.
What did you do with yourselves all the time?
I just used to stay home, tidy up.
Where does something like the trust here, where does that fit in with...
Well, as you saw today, I got along with the rest of the people, so haven't really met them, so yeah.
Yeah, actually, I thought you'd been here ages because you seem to know everybody.
2 days, probably half of the day get to know them, so you're around them most of the day. So.
Yeah. Do you enjoy it?
Yeah. Best part of it though is you get to ride the bike in the morning.
Cora's not the only one here whose background is troubled. Perhaps one of the reasons the horses seem to understand their young charges is that they too have faced their own struggles in the past.
He, believe it or not, is a Kaimanawa wild horse, and he came to us after dark one night, rattling on a truck straight from the Kaimanawa muster. He was about 5 or 6 months old, a little foal who had been ripped from his mum, and he was so frightened. And we've been on a very long journey with Benny. He just could not cope with his fears, and he would jump every fence and off the property, and we'd have to find a way of getting him back home along the busy road. And he just ran. He would be fearful and run. And so I made it my business to make his life worthwhile. and to teach. This is a good tool for the children too, to see how a frightened young creature can learn to trust.
Because I watched you earlier on.
Yes.
And Ben is the one who he climbs up on the
pedestal
stand with you.
He'll climb up. One day we were running a course for animal control officers, and I was standing on the pedestal talking to 100 people. And at the end, he was going to get onto the pedestal to take a bow and say, well, this is the end of the talk. But he got sick of me talking, and he just pushed me off and stood up there and started to run the show. But this is the difference, you know, and he said, dear boy, can you put your head down, Ben? Put your head down, darling. That's my boy. He will just do anything for me now because he's learned to trust. And that's how the children have to learn to trust. And trust themselves. He has to trust himself now to look to me for leadership. And so he's just an example of what you can do if you show leadership. And that's why he now trusts me. But if you had seen what a frightened little boy he was, you'd never believe he's the same horse. This is what can be achieved with the children too.
Your faith is obviously central.
Yeah. Without it, how would this work? How would this work? I don't know how it would work. I can't do it in my own strength because I haven't got any. Yeah, so it's very central to what we do. Yeah. And until someone with that same faith steps in, I can't go. I just can't. But there are lovely supportive people around us, you know, in this organisation. We're like a family. And yes, we just soldier on, you know. Jesus said, if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. And that's pretty clear really, isn't it?